Hello again, Vinyl Community. This is Matt, and today I want to start a kind of a new little series that I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to be showing two albums from the 80s, just kind of going into some details about them and so on. And I'm sure a lot of the albums you guys will know, but maybe some of the albums a few of you guys won't be so familiar with. And part of the reason I want to do this is that for nostalgia reasons, the 80s is probably my favorite decade for music. Objectively, I think the 70s is better, and you can make a pretty good case for the 90s too. But again, just in terms of nostalgia, I was born in '79, but I obviously don't remember any of it. So I grew up in the 80s. The 80s was my decade, and particularly the mid to late 80s. Um, you know, I can remember more and more from that time. Remember when a lot of the songs were in the charts, when a lot of the albums were big, and I have a lot of '80s albums. So and some things may be a little more obscure. So yeah. So today we're going to start off with definitely two of the biggest artists from the '80s, Wham and Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Coincidentally, both these albums are from 1984. That actually wasn't deliberate when I picked out the albums to do for this video. I just kind of realized it as I was having another quick look at them, and I thought, oh, they're both from the same year, but it doesn't really matter. And yeah, let's start off with Frankie Goes to Hollywood, which is playing right now. And the album is Welcome to the Pleasure Dome. And I'll take it out of the sleeve here. And this is really a pretty excellent album, and the copy that I have is in really nice condition. This album is a gatefold, which I'll open up to show you. It's got some really interesting artwork in the middle of it. And here's the back, and the vinyl, it's like that. It's a 2-disc set. This is disc 2. Disc 1 is playing right now on the turntable behind me. And I mean, this Frankie Goes to Hollywood only had 2 albums actually. This was the first one, by far the more popular of the 2. This has all of their biggest hits on it. Relax, which is playing at the moment. 2 Tribes, Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, The Power of Love. It has a really interesting version of Born to Run as well, Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run. I got this album for, I want to say $1 from a Goodwill many years ago. This even predates my getting back into vinyl, to be honest with you. I've kind of told my little vinyl story before, but I was gifted a turntable more than a decade ago, and and I bought a few records, went to Goodwill, but I wasn't into it. I did it so that I had a few records to test out the turntable with, to be honest with you. And then pretty soon after, the turntable got shelved, then later on it got boxed up when I moved, and was never taken out again until I got back into vinyl, and in many ways back into music. But yeah, this was one of the records I bought during that time, during the Goodwill trip. I'm pretty sure it was about $1. It's in really nice condition, and yeah, it's kind of a bit of an essential album to have. I mean, if you're into 80s music in particular, like 80s pop, I guess some of this borders on soft rock, but 80s pop music, then yeah, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, you gotta have it, right? And again, all of the biggest hits. The second album, which came out I think 2 years later in '86, only had a couple of singles on it, and really only one of those, to my knowledge, was a medium hit. That was Rage Hard, but and that album was called Liverpool, I think. But it's yeah, this is the only album I have. I don't have the second album, but it's yeah, it's really good stuff. Second album, Wham! Make It Big. I used to have 2 copies of this. This is a US pressing. I used to have a UK copy as well, which was possibly the only time I have ever bought an album without realizing I already had it. I've heard of other people doing that, and I was kind of surprised it hadn't happened to me before. I mean, it's not like I have thousands of records, but I have hundreds and enough where, yeah, like I said, I'm kind of surprised I hadn't done it before. But I already had this, and I ordered it from Discogs. I ordered several albums from a UK seller. Make It Big was one of them, and it was only when it turned up and I realized I already had the album. I ended up trading in the UK pressing at a record store, and I kept the US one for two reasons. One, the US one is still in the shrink and still has the hype sticker on it. It's also in beautiful condition, although the UK one was in very good condition too. And number two, I just prefer the look of it. I prefer the album artwork. The UK one is honestly really boring. It's just like a white border with a picture in the middle. But look at this. I mean, look at the graphics on it. It's just, I don't know, it looks really cool. This was on Columbia Records. It was a very standard Columbia Records label of the 80s. And I got this as well from a Goodwill. This is a Goodwill that I've had several really good scores at. And I got this along with a bunch of other 80s albums, all in like, well, I wouldn't, maybe not mint condition, that word's probably overused a little bit, but all in like excellent condition. And this was one of them, like I said, still in the shrink, still got the hype sticker, plays beautifully. In fact, it still has the original price sticker from the 80s on it, $8.99, which is kind of cool. And there's the back of it. And this, in my opinion, is definitely Wham's best album, not including the final, which was a UK release, which was really more of a greatest hits album. I'm not going to count that. But the three main releases, Fantastic, Make It Big, and Music from the Edge of Heaven, which was actually, funnily enough, not released in the UK. That was a US release. I think this is the best one because it's got more hits on it than the others. So the track listing is Wake Me Up Before You Go Go, which is, you know, the quintessential Wham track, right? I'm sure it's the first song that everybody thinks of when you say Wham. Everything She Wants, which was another one of the 4 singles that were released off this album. Heartbeat, which was also released off this album. I believe that was the last single released, but it was not a massive hit. And Like a Baby, and side 2, we have Freedom, which was another UK number 1, terrific song. If You Were There, Credit Card Baby, and Careless Whisper. I'm not 100% sure if Careless Whisper's on the UK version. I don't remember, to be honest with you. Of course, Careless Whisper is often attributed as being a George Michael solo track. In fact, in the UK, that is how it's attributed. In the US, it's considered to be a Wham track, primarily because it's on the Make It Big album. Ironically, if you look at the songwriting credits for this album, everything is listed as being George Michael only, except for 1 or 2 songs. Like this, I think there's like an Isley Brothers written track on here, but nothing is credited to Andrew Ridgeley, except Careless Whisper, which is credited to both George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley, even though it's usually considered to be a George Michael solo track. So it's kind of a weird situation, but yeah, just again a great album. And I do have the other 2 albums that I mentioned, Fantastic and Music from the Edge of Heaven, but to me this is definitely the best Wham album. And yeah, you know, this was at the height of their powers, height of their fame, and again, just really, I think a bit of a must-have album if you're interested in 80s pop music. And again, this is my era, you know. This predates a little bit before I can remember. You know, I was 5 years old in '84. I remember Billy Joel, Uptown Girl being in the charts, kind of, and that was '83 actually. But for the most part, my music memories don't start till around '86 when I was 6 or 7. But of course, you know, I still grew up with George Michael being big. I have the Faith album actually on vinyl, and grew up with Wham being played on the radio in the '80s all the time and so on. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this little um, 80s 80s flashback video. I do intend to do more of these. It's not like I'm gonna do these 80s albums every time, but I'm thinking, you know, every 2 or 3 videos will be one of these little 80s album collections where I just showed a couple of the albums that I have from the 80s, and that way it's gonna take a while to work through them. So yeah, and yeah, tomorrow, quick little shout out to Greg. Um, I am meeting. He's a fellow VCer, fellow YouTuber. I am meeting him tomorrow afternoon. We're going to go to a record store. It should be cool. He lives in the same city as me, which I found out because he had posted a video where he was in Riverside, where I live, and so I asked him, "Oh, are you in Riverside too?" And he said, "Yeah." So I just said, you know, hey, we should meet up. We'll go to a record store. The record store has a sale on tomorrow for Memorial Day. Tomorrow's a holiday here in the US. It's supposed to be 20% off all used vinyl, and I think maybe CDs and whatever else too. I'm not too sure. As long as it's used, I think it's 20% off. So we'll see what we find tomorrow, and I'm sure I'll be posting a follow-up video. So as always, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.